Make it, Joe?
He was CPO mess cook. And old Wild, and you remember Whitey, the old big boy that was a heavyweight
You want me
fighter?
up there, Joe?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay. He was a heavyweight fighter, you know. And
What was his name?
they called him, you know, he was a heavyweight. And old Gore was the light heavyweight, and that black man off of the can knocked Gore out at the smoker, you know.
I don't remember that.
You was light. What was you, light heavyweight, wasn't you? Right?
No, I was welterweight.
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 Well, you fought old McKenzie
Joe McKenzie there.
and Brett. Brett was a lightweight, I think.
I remember Brett, yeah.
Brett.
Okay. This is May 13th, 1988. Okay. This is May 13th, 1988. My name is Joe Todd, and this is an interview with Mr. Roy Stewart in Kansas City, and you live in Fayetteville, Ohio.
Yes, Fayetteville, Ohio. I have a farm a mile out of Fayetteville.
And so where were you born?
I was born in St. Paul, Indiana, September the 22nd, 1910.
And you go through school there, and
Yes, went through school there.
why'd you join the Navy?
Well, I was born outside of St. Paul. I say St. Paul, but it was outside of St. Paul on a farm. And I worked 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week with my dad. When I was about 10 years old, I started working in the field with him. So after about the time I hit 14, I says, there must be a better way of making a living than this on the farm. So that's what gave me the idea to join the Navy. And another reason was that I would be able to see the world, get around, travel a lot. I wanted to do that. I hadn't saw nothing but the farm all my life. So anyway, that's what got me interested in the Navy.
And where'd you go to boot camp?
Great Lakes, Illinois. It's outside of north of Chicago there, because you know where that.
And how long did boot camp last?
3 months, but I was held over there an extra month. They had me pick me out for the race boat crew, and I was held over a month there at the lakes at the training station.
Okay, now tell me about the race boat crew. What do they do?
Well, if I remember right, there was eight of us in this crew, and we raced over in Indiana. I can't remember where it was at. Some lake in Indiana. They sent us over there, and it was a good race. There was four boats in the race. We placed second, which wasn't bad at all. We held them for a while, but they outlasted us.
Now, what type of boats were you racing?
What type?
Yeah.
Regular race boats. I don't know particularly what they were
Oh, these
called.
long, skinny things that they...
Yeah. No, not the long, skinny type. The more of the whale boat type.
Oh, okay.
The heavier boat, the whale boat type.
Okay. And when did you go aboard the Oklahoma?
I went aboard the Oklahoma in May 1926.
Did you request the Oklahoma?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Because it had bunks on it. That was the main reason. I had enough of them hammocks while I was in a training station.
When did they put the bunks on the Oklahoma?
Well, I don't know. When they put them on, Joe, they had them. Had them aboard when I came on board, but I think they put them aboard in 1925, maybe 24. They'd had them quite a while. And that it was only, I think, was the only ship that had them at that particular time. Boy, that's what attracted me.
Yeah, now you had hammocks on the Great Cruise, didn't you?
When?
On the Great Cruise in 25? You still
No,
have hammocks?
No, we have.
No, they had bunks then.
They had bunks then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got bunked, I think it was when we come back from Panama that time. You know, like we.
When was that, 24?
23.
23?
Or
Uh-huh.
24.
About 23 we had bunks, I think.
Is that also when they put the new mast on?
No, they went from the cage mast to the tripod mast in 1927.
27.
We went around and into the Philadelphia shipyard, Navy Yard. And I was one of the lucky men that got to stay aboard. That time there was about approximately 175 men, and I was picked as one of the men to stay aboard during the remodernization of the Oklahoma.
Why were you allowed to stay on board?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, they had to have men, that is Navy men, to clean up. We were cleanup detail for the shipyard workers and also mainly for fire watches. And we had a fire watch around the clock, 24-hour day fire watch. That was two reasons.
Yeah. What's the reason for the fire watch?
Well, they had the welders, a lot of welders, a lot of burners during this remodernization, and every burner and every welder, we had to have a fire watch with him all day long while he was working. And the Navy men was assigned to that.
Let me back up and ask, when you first saw the Oklahoma, what'd you think?
Well, best I could describe it when I looked at it, it was just something from outer space. The best way I could explain it. It was beyond belief to me.
And you went on board where?
In San Pedro, California.
San Pedro, California.
Yeah, San Pedro.
Would you just tell me about the ship being modernized? Just what did you do?
Well, as I say, my job was, we lived in barracks all the time we were there. It was around 2 years, and we had to keep our own barracks clean as compartment cleaners or barracks cleaners, and mess cooking was another job, which I did that, and mess cooked there, and I was also helped clean up the barracks or living spaces, and then fire watches, and clean up, keep the ship cleaned up after the yard work, and that was our main purpose.
How did they take the cage mast off the ship?
Well, they cut them off a piece at a time, and then used a big crane. They have I believe, they have the very big crane there in Philadelphia.
What were those cage masts made of?
Steel. They were made.
How big?
I don't remember exactly how big they were. Approximately 4 inches, and there was many legs on this.
Was it just solid steel?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Rod or whatever they
No.
were made of?
They go across.
Cross there.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Then they.
But each end of the piece was a piece of solid steel.
That's right.
Solid steel rod.
I don't know how high they went, but they went well over 100 feet in the air.
Yeah, it must have been.
125 feet maybe, the height of it.
Yeah.
Now that was the old cage mask, and they put them on. The new ones they put on was called the tripod.
Yeah.
Tripod.
Why did they go from the cage mast to the tripod mast?
I really can't say why they did.
Do you know, Mr. Bennett, why they went to?
Not unless you could see the cage mast for miles and miles, and you couldn't see the tripod as well.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Well, that was what they call modernized.
Didn't make such a good target. I would say is why they changed.
And the other was,
So the cage mast was the rod spiral up or what?
Yeah, spiraled up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen the photographs of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long did that modernization take?
We went in there in September 1927, and we came out and was ready to go on a shakedown cruise in August of 1929. We went down all the way down to Trinidad. And we were on this shakedown cruise for approximately 2 weeks, I would say.
What all did they do to the Oklahoma besides put the new mast on?
Well, they had these what they call the double bottoms, and they changed that into a lot of fuel tanks, fuel storage tanks. For the fuel, we worked in those tanks down there, chipping the paint for many, many weeks to get them ready to transfer them over to fuel tanks. And that was the main reason, one of the big jobs.
Why is a shakedown cruise different than a regular cruise?
Well, you're testing everything. You're training the men. Men is being trained to their jobs and their battle stations. And you train and practice this the whole 2 or 3 weeks that you're on this shakedown cruise. And it's also for testing the ship out, the engines and everything aboard the ship.
Now,
testing and checking
what do you
out
do
everything.
what exactly do you do in a shakedown cruise you don't do in a normal cruise? On a normal cruise.
It's more of
Well,
a name than anything.
pretty much that's what we were training to do for a normal cruise. You see, we had all new men and everything. We brought on well over 1,000 new men. We had to train these men for the regular duties and battle stations and so forth that we would have in regular everyday training.
What was your average day on the Oklahoma?
Well, my average day was, I was in the deck force to start with. Average day there was, first you'd start out in the morning watch. Your reveille was 5:30 in the morning. Had coffee till 6 o'clock. Wake you up, and then you went up at 6 o'clock and you washed down the decks.
That Holy Stone?
No, that holy stoning is on a
Friday.
field day on a Friday, once a week. And wash the decks down good, squeegee them down, wipe off the water off all the paintwork around to wipe the salt water off. And by that time, it was 7 o'clock. It took you approximately an hour. So you went down, cleaned up, got ready for breakfast. Mess gear went at 7:15. 7:30 was piped down, which was breakfast. 7:30 to 8. And 8 o'clock, you'd hear turn 2 go on the loudspeaking system, and then you went to. Now this is when I was on the deck gang there. Then you'd probably start chipping paint, or old paint, wash the clean paint, shine the bright work, and that was pretty much what you done during the morning till 11:30. And 11:30 you knocked off work and mess gear at 11:45 and piped down noon meal at 12 o'clock. Then 12 to 1 you were off. And our band would come back after main deck of the ship, and they would entertain us with this band till 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock was turn 2, from 1 to 4:30. And you picked up what you had left over from the morning. But I might add, I got to back up a little. A lot of times at 9:30 till 11, and at 11:30 sometimes, was gunnery drill.
Yeah.
We'd have that almost every morning. Gun drill, which was in the turret, the 14-inch gun. Yeah.
General quarters.
General quarters. It sounds general quarters around 9:30, and then you'd have gun drill till maybe 11:15.
Where was your station during your general quarters?
Well, when I first went in my first battle station was down in the lower handling room. They had 2 hoists on each side of the handling room, and you put these 14-inch powder bags in there, which was 4 bags per gun. And there was 12, 15 men down in the lower handling room, and 3 or 4 on each side of the magazine, powder magazines that turned the powder out, and then you'd grab a bag of powder and come over here and put it in a hoist, electric chain endless hoist that went up to the guns, all the way up to the guns. Was my first battle station, was the lower handling room, powder handling room.
Where was your station during abandoned ship?
During abandoned ship, I was alongside of the lifeboat, port side.
Port side.
Mm-hmm. First thing I done in abandoned ship was I'd run up there and fall in formation with my division there.
Mm-hmm. Which division were you a member?
I was the 4th Division.
4th Division. Okay. Anything out of the ordinary happened from the time you went on board until the earthquake of 33, besides the modernization? Any specific incidents?
Well, none that I can remember out of the ordinary.
What kind of trouble did you get into?
I never got into too much trouble. I didn't. My biggest problem was coming back.
We got some people laughing over here.
Oh, I get in a fight once in a while over on the beach, during my drinking time there.
Ever have a captain's mass?
Yes. For being overleave, I was never overleave too much. I was overleave about an hour. Another friend of mine, and we had to go to captain's mass and had to get a regulation haircut, which I didn't have at the time, and that's all I got out of that. But another time in San Pedro, I got tangled up with the shore patrol and got fighting there and run off and left the shore patrol. Well, they rounded us up in an hour or so and come back aboard ship, and I got to put on a report, and I got a summary court-martial out of that. But I was in pretty good with the Chief Master at Arms, which was Jordan, and
Chop.
and he's told, the captain says, what should we do with this man here, Jordan? He says, well, he's a good man. Very good man. Well, he says, we'll just forget this. I didn't get nothing out of it.
Who was the captain?
The captain then was Captain Hall. Captain Hall.
Would you describe exactly what a captain's mass is?
Well, a captain mass is, first thing is, they put you on report, write down what you done, what you wasn't supposed to do, and that next day you'd be a captain mass, if I remember right, was held around 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was up on just outside of the captain's cabin. They'd set up a desk there, and you'd go up there and stand in front of it. At attention, here'd come the captain out of the captain's cabin. He'd read over the charge. Then he might look over and say, well, did you do this? Or did you not? Are you guilty or are you not guilty? No, you say, yes, sir, I did that, Captain. Then he would put out the sentence, what he's going to, whether it be a deck court-martial or a summary or maybe a warning. And then usually you've got something. To start out with, you'd get extra duty. You might get 4 hours, you might get 12 or 24 hours of extra duty. Or if it was more severe, well, you got a court-martial, maybe you'd get busted. Maybe you'd get thrown in the brig. Bread and water for 3 days. Or
Where was the brig?
brig was down on the third deck, aft. After part of the third deck on the starboard side. Had 2 cells in there. And, to back up a bit there, when I got that tangled up there in patrol, they give me the summary court-martial, and they don't read you off right away what you're going to get. So they throwed me in the brig. I was in there about an hour, and Jordan come down, and he said, well, you can go now. But in the meantime, during that hour, he had talked to the captain. Now, why he said I was such a good man, I don't know. But he did, and he says, Captain's throwing out the summary, you're free.
Who was Jordan?
Jordan was the chief master at arms, chief of police, you'd call him in civilian life. He had a big mouth and a very nice guy, and he was tough, though. You could hear him holler from one end of the ship that he'd spot you up on the bow of the ship. You could hear him holler clear up there. And I understand, was on the ship longer than any man. Now, I came in second. Of course, Jordan been long dead and gone a long time ago. I came in second. Length of time aboard the Oklahoma, which was from May 1926 until December 7, 1941. I was aboard the Oklahoma, and that was a home if I ever saw one.
What were your quarters on the ship?
I had turret 4. I went from seaman second to first class and had turret 4 on there the morning the Japs hit.
Before we get to there, 1933.
1933,
The earthquake.
the earthquake. I was, that afternoon they had the all-Navy fights in Long Beach there, wrestling and boxing championships. And after that I went over to a fellow's apartment, Johnny Sears' apartment over in Long Beach. And had another fellow with us by the name of Vic Ninsa. 3 of us was up on the second floor of this apartment. And of course we had some whiskey. And I was just getting ready to having me another drink, and tossing up, standing up in the middle of the room there, and that chandelier started to slowly move, and then it kept going faster and faster. What the heck is going on here? I'd never been in an earthquake before. And Johnny Sears hollered, he says, earthquake, earthquake! Get out of here, get out of here. So I set my whiskey down, and they run down the stairs, and I didn't run down the steps. I run over to the window and looked out. I kicked the window open. Looked out, and people down there were hollering for me, jump out, jump out. And I thought to myself, well, I'll jump out, I'll break my legs or something. My neck, I'm not jumping. I look across the street there, and there was a hospital. And this whole side of the hospital just fell right over, opened up completely. You could see the people in their rooms there. And that was when I went down the steps and on outside. And we went over to the hospital. They wanted us to help them over there. And cars would come. We would carry the casualties in, the people who were hurt from the earthquake, into the hospital. And 10, 15 minutes later, they'd call us in, and we'd go in, carry them back out dead, lay them out on the lawn. And if my memory's right, there were 76 killed that morning. But one thing that stood out more than anything that night, we worked in the hospital, was it was dark. Of course, the electricity was out throughout the city. And this fellow here, he says, hey, have you got a cigarette? I said, sure. I knew he was hurt. He was sitting down here on the lawn, but he was sitting up. So I pulled a cigarette out and gave it to him, and I thought, I'm going to see what's wrong with this fella. So I lit a match to light his cigarette, you know. And I could see that his leg was cut off just below the knee, and that one tendon that was, his leg was turned around inside, and that tendon there was just holding. He had a tourniquet above his knee, and he was sitting there smoking that cigarette, and that, I couldn't figure that out, how that man could do that. But I guess he was in shock, and it apparently didn't hurt him too much. He sat there and smoked his cigarette. I got away from there.
How did it affect the Oklahoma, the earthquake?
Well, we were sent over on patrol immediately.
Did you go back on board the ship right after the earthquake, or?
The next morning I went back, and then they broke us up in squads and sent us back over to protect the people from looting and stores and so forth. Mm-hmm. And we were over there for, I think, around 10 days. 9-10 days we were patrolling in Long Beach area and just keep the looters and so forth. Stealing everything, you know.
Anything particular happened in those 10
No,
days?
not but one thing. I had a buddy there. He was carrying a .45. He had a squad of men, and the squad had rifles, see, which I was third class gunner's mate then, and I had a .45 pistol, and I had 4 men. But my friend that was carrying this pistol, he was quite a guy anyway. Character, pretty bad character. And he got shot in the back of the head with a .30-30. They never did find out who done it.
Kill him?
Oh yeah, killed him. Right. Oh yeah. His name was Gaines. He's from Georgia.
Was he from the Oklahoma?
Yes, he was same division, Oklahoma. I was in. Never found out who shot him. Somebody was waiting on him, I guess.
Did the Oklahoma suffer any damage at all from the earthquake?
No. But it did. They fellows that I talked to there, they said it sounded. It shook the battleship just like we were backing down full steam to stern. It shook the Oklahoma like that. But it never damaged anything, no. It damaged lots of homes and buildings in Long Beach. It's centered in Compton. And it almost, the bricks and stuff from the buildings along the street that fell over into the street almost covered some of the cars in a couple of streets of Compton where it was centered at.
So, from Long Beach after the earthquake, where'd you go on the Oklahoma?
Where did we go then? Oh, we went right back to our regular exercise. We'd go out sometimes on a Monday and come back in Friday night out for gunnery exercises and back in and anchor. Of course, then during the Big Depression, and we didn't get underway too much. They was conserving fuel, and which made us sailors real happy. Go ashore every night and every other night.
Where's your favorite place to go on Liberty in Long Beach?
I'd say San Pedro. I had my best times in San Pedro.
Tell me about it.
Well, I had 2 or 3 girls there, of course. One wasn't available, I'd have me another one. Reserve. had a Buick Roadster. I'd won almost 400, about between $300 and $400, and I went and bought me a car. I bought this Sport Roadster, and it was a nice one. It was a green Sport Roadster with a red pin stripe around it. And I was drinking quite a bit, and I finally tore it up, accidents. But one night we was going up this hill in San Pedro, or this roadster, and another sailor. We had our girls with us, and we're going up this hill, and I was pretty well wound up, and I never shifted from high to second. But it kept slowing down. Finally, it darn thing stopped about the top of the hill and started down backwards. I just steered it back as I could, as well as I could, all the way back down and hit a deep rut down there. Broke my axles on the Buick. I finally got them fixed. Then another time with the same car, which finished it, I was going up Vermont Avenue. Vic Nins and I, we had a date in Los Angeles. He was clicking off the streets. He said 80, 79, 78, and that was the last I remember. Till I picked myself up out in the middle of the street there. Had the top down, and I went right on out into the street. Of course, the police was there right away and picked us up. And of all people to hit, I hit a woman and a little girl, her daughter. And she was married to a big shot lawyer there in Los Angeles. I was about 3 years paying that off, the damages. And they got cut from glass and so on. The only thing that I got was I got a cut on my face, not bad. Closed one of my eyes, and where my head went down and hit the horn button on this Buick Roadster was in the center of the steering wheel vent. That was about a 1930 model. I split that horn button, so I hit it pretty hard. I closed my eye, and I had the eye closed when I had to go to court in Los Angeles. And this cop that arrested me that night, he was sitting with me when I went to court. He said, "I feel sorry for you." He says, "You got the only one woman judge in Los Angeles, and she's tough. She's going to bury you." Boy, oh boy, this is it. Well, my case come up in a little bit. She looked over her glasses at me. Judge Fitzgerald was her name. I remember, never will forget it. My eye was still closed. I was an innocent-looking guy standing there looking at her. She says, "You don't look like the type of a sailor that would get drunk and do this." I thought to myself, well, things is looking a little better than I thought anyway. And she asked me if I'd been drinking. I said, "Sure. I'd had a few beers, several beers." She said, "How many?" I said, "Probably 8 or 10, maybe more than that." Then the district attorney says to her, he says, "Judge, this is the first man that's been up here told the truth in 6 months." Oh. So she says, "I'm going to charge you for reckless driving. Not drunken driving, reckless driving, fine me $50, which was a lot of money in 1932. I happened to have that much money with me because I'd go into my shipmates around and borrowed it because I knew I'd need some money. So I went to them and borrowed, I don't know, maybe $100, but I had enough to pay my $50 fine. That was one of my escapades during the 30s.
Mm-hmm. Midshipman cruise of 36.
Well, that was interesting. We went around, the Nevada was with us. Went around to the East Coast, down through the Panama Canal to the East Coast, and up to Annapolis and picked up the midshipmen.
How many?
Oh, boy, let's see. Offhand, I'd say 200 or more. We had a lot of them. There would be so many assigned to each division throughout the ship there. And it was a nice cruise. We went to England, tied up Portsmouth in the Navy Yard there in England. I went up to London. Another sailor and I, a shipmate, we went there and spent 5 days up. Got 5 days leave up in London. That was pretty good.
Tell me about that. We leave in London.
Well, we liked our beer, of course, and they call them pubs there. And it was in the summertime. And the worst part, they had good beer, very good beer. The worst part was if you want no cold beer. If you want a cold beer, they go over in the shady part of the bar. They had sort of big glass, seemed like big glass fronts. The sun be shining in, you go in the shade and get you a beer. That was a cold beer. Oh boy. But beer's beer, whether it's hot or cold. And then the taxis there were horse-drawn carriages. Excellent. Quarter or 50 cents, you could get a long taxi ride, horse-drawn buggies. And it was interesting, and took in different things. I can't remember just what I did take in now, mostly. Spent most of my time in the pubs. Girls were a little shy there in those days. They're much different now. Morals were pretty high back in '36. And
Was that before or after the abdication of Edward the?
if I remember right, it was during that time. And I didn't make the parade. We sent a parade over for this King Edward, what was it, the Sixth?
Edward the Sixth, the Duke of Windsor that abdicated for.
We went on the parade.
Edward the Sixth or Edward the Seventh, one of the others.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we went from there to England. Went to Sweden, to can't remember that name of that port in Sweden. My gosh, I never thought I'd forget that. Anyway, on the way into the port there, a bunch of swimmers come out to meet us, and they were all naked. Boy, we couldn't figure that out. A lot of girls were naked, and they were swimming alongside the ship while we were slowly coming up into the port, see? And boy, them sailors run over, man the rail. Watch, see what's going on here. Finally, they got wise and they swam away, But it was odd, and they didn't think anything of it at that time. Now, Sweden, I assume, has changed a lot since then. 50 years is a long time, and things as morals of the people like that have definitely changed. We had a good time in Sweden. I was a Swedish girl that couldn't speak not one word of English. Didn't have much fun. No fun, in fact. But it was the city was spotless clean. The streets were spotless clean. Never seen a city like that before or since. Went from there down to France to Marseille.
And when did you first get the word that you were to pick up the Spanish refugees?
That was when we was down anchored down in Marseille. Then we got the word, and we transferred the midshipmen off of there. I don't know just where they went. Anyway, they come back to the States, and we stayed there for several days. And we were right off of Balboa. And but of course we didn't get to go ashore or anything in Spain. And our motor launches went in and brought refugees out to the ship. And I remember standing and watching them come aboard on the stern of the ship.
How were they brought on board?
They brought aboard by motor launch.
You're going to have to take it.
That's the cage bass.
Yeah.
And that's the way the other one was.
Okay.
Give us an hour.
What do we got to do?
We gotta get out so you can come in and clean the room, I guess.
Well, you need me to come back, Joe?
Yeah, we gotta finish up Spain and then Pearl Harbor. Wanna go up to our room and finish it? Wanna go up
Sure.
there? Okay.
Sure.
Well, let's go up. I'm down. I can't go up.
Can I help you here? Move the stuff here?
Yeah, if you can just
Yeah,
get
I
there.
know you'll need some help. Yeah, I'll bring you.
Okay.
What time do we eat?
I don't know, when is lunchtime?
It's 5
Well,
after.
it's about 12 now.
You want to do it after lunch?
Yes,
Well,
let's
okay.
do, Joe. How about if I come back, what time will you want me to come back to yours?
Why don't you just leave this stuff
Leave the
here,
stuff
Oh,
there.
okay.
take an hour's break, and come back?
Yeah, we'll just come back here
That
then.
way you don't have to move anything.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be back here
Let's do
around
that.
1 o'clock. Huh?
Okay, that sounds good. That means.
Okay.
When they were in Samoa, Mike couldn't tell one half of what went on in Samoa. I wanted to interrupt and tell him.
I had
to
full
tell like you
conduct
told
the
me.
whole time I was
They always let him go.
Poor old
Oh,
conduct,
it's still
the whole
going
20
on.
years. I told the
They
captain.
bullshitted, you know, you bullshitted those people so bad it wasn't funny.
That's true. That's what the captain on St. Louis told me.
He always looked, he had curly hair then, he
Yeah,
always
he
looked
looked
so
always interested.
innocent.
Yeah,
He had a lot of hair.
Yeah.
I told the captain that on St. Louis when I stayed over one night. I was supposed to be back at 12 in Shanghai after the war was
Yeah.
over. And they called me the next morning when I come back. And I had to go to mass. The captain says, boy, he was mad. He was having trouble with white hats. He says, Chief Petty Officer, you're the worst accused one I ever seen. Anyway, he says,
You were wearing gold?
I went up my gold hash marks was on my good conduct medals up here. I said, Captain, I've got the poor old conduct for 20 years. Boy, he looked down, he was a big man. Looked down. Yes, he says, you just got away with it for 20 years.
That is true.
That's right.
He said, get out of here. He says,
Really a revelation, I wish I knew it all.
He said,
You had all bullshit.
Yeah.
That was a whole.
well, I never got that.
I can imagine.
He always
You
got
don't have to tell me,
out.
that's what
I
my
never got
imagination was wild.
That kind of interview makes you think you're back on the ship. Sounds about like mine, about the same kind of.
What happened in Samoa you didn't talk about?
Oh, Samoa, oh, that was pretty good. Then, oh, it was just a nice, clean island, and what we got the biggest kick out of.
Okay, we were talking about the coast of Spain, picking up the refugees.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And you said that you were there at Bilbao?
Balboa.
Bal-
Is it?
Balboa.
Balboa.
Balboa or Bilbao?
I thought it was Balboa.
Maybe it is, I don't know.
We didn't stay. We didn't stay there too long. Seemed like it was 3 or 4 days, and we left. And I believe that we. I don't know where we took these refugees. I don't know where we took them to and taking them off at. We left there and we headed back toward the States. But as far as I know, I can't remember where they dropped the refugees off at.
How'd you bring them on board the Oklahoma?
We brought them on board with the cargo nets. Picked them up in the cargo nets out of the motor launch and set them on the stern of the ship. And then they had one big compartment for them to stay in, you know. Of course, they were women and children. And I'm sure there were some men, you know.
Who were the refugees mainly? Who were the refugees? Were they Spanish? Were they Americans or who?
I think there were a mixture of there's Americans and Spanish both. They seemed to be more of older people and kids, young children. And we weren't there very long. We had no business there other than pick up the refugees. And that's the only place that I remember that we picked refugees up at.
Have any trouble with the Spanish, with Franco's people?
No trouble with them. No. I don't remember of any trouble at all. It was just. I don't think the trouble was right in around that area anyway. I think it was some other part of Spain.
And any idea how many refugees you picked up altogether?
I don't have any idea. I have no idea at all, Joe. It was several, maybe 80 or 90, or it wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't a whole lot. I do remember that. 80, 90 maybe.
So, you came back to the States. Anything happened from... Oh, tell me about the broken shaft on the Oklahoma.
I don't remember that too well either. But we did break a shaft, and we limped all the way to Bremerton.
When did this
Shipyard.
happen? What year do you...
I think it was in 1937. See, I was in the turret, in the turret's crew, and I didn't get too much in on that shaft deal. We could crawl in there, and we never come out unless it was for something worthwhile. You know.
What about when the Macon went down?
Well, we was at sea that night, was out on maneuvers. And I remember that very well. We had a radio, and the antenna run on out and on top of the turret thing. We had a radio, and long about 8 or 9 o'clock at night this happened. And it came over the radio, news on the radio that the Macon was down. So we turned, and boy, we went and kicked her in full speed ahead. Because you could tell the way the ship was. I was in the after part of the ship, the last turn. You could tell the way the stern of the ship would shake when you was going at full speed. And we went full speed toward the Macon. But there's other ships that beat us there, like cruisers and, faster ships. Oklahoma was slow. She was less than 31 knots, 30 point something. So we didn't get there in time to see it or anything. I remember that I went topside, you couldn't see nothing.
And then what about hitting the freight train?
I don't remember that too well at all. That was a barge with a freight train on it. But I don't remember that incident at all.
Any other incidents you can remember up to December 7th?
Well, let's see. No, I can't remember of any other thing, Joe. Other than routine stuff, From the midshipman cruise on up till the fleet went out to Pearl Harbor was just routine.
Okay.
Mostly swinging around the hook there at San Pedro Harbor, Long Beach Harbor there.
Now, what was your duties in the turret?
Well, when I was a gun striker, I had the left gun. That was my job, to take care of the left gun on the end.
Now, what's a striker? What do they do?
They were the help. They were gunner's mates' helpers. They called them strikers, gun strikers.
And what'd you do?
Well, I had the left gun, and I kept the gun, cleaned the screw of the gun and the plug inside the chamber and the outside. And once a week, we'd clean the bore of the guns, sponge them out with oil as a weekly routine, and wash the paintwork on the outside of the turret and the guns. That was our job there. Once a week on a field day, we'd wash up all the paintwork and clean. And that was my main job, was the left gun in the turret.
Okay. What were you doing December 6th, Saturday, 1941?
Well, it was pretty much of a routine Saturday. Liberty started at 12 o'clock, and you had Liberty was up at midnight for single men. And if you were married and your family was over in Honolulu, why, you had overnight liberty. Well, I didn't even go ashore that night because I wasn't married or anything then. So I didn't go ashore on December the 6th or the night of the 6th. I was aboard ship. And us gunner's mates and slept inside of the turret. We had cots in there, and we slept in there.
What did you do for recreation when you didn't go ashore on the Oklahoma?
Well, in a turret's crew, we'd play acey-deucey till 9 o'clock at night. Different kinds of card games. But taps went at 9 o'clock. So after supper from 5:30 to 6 was supper, dinner time, see. And after that, we'd play cards and sit around and shoot the breeze. Mostly play cards or different games, you know. Seemed like the evenings passed pretty good, but it wasn't long till 9 o'clock. Heck, we went to bed.
Were lights out at 9 o'clock?
Lights out at 9, yeah.
So, would you tell me in detail, December 7th, exactly what happened?
Okay, I went up to the barber shop. I knew the 4 barbers in the barber shop. There was one of them ashore, and the 3 of us, 3 barbers and myself, was sitting in the barber shop, which was on the port side. And we were tied up alongside of the Maryland. And we were outboard of the Maryland, which put the port side outboard and made it very easy for the Japs when they come in over Pearl Harbor. They hit the port side of the Oklahoma. And there was 4 Arrow torpedoes they put in the port side. And the first one that hit was sitting there in the chairs was shooting the breeze. Us 4 followed. And they passed the word, air attacked, over the loudspeaker. This is no drill. About that time, General Quarters went.
What exactly did you hear?
That's what I heard sitting in the chair, was it passed the word. And then as soon as General Alarm went, the Okie seemed to come up out of the water about 3 feet. Like that. Back down again. That's when the first torpedo hit. They hit right under the barber shop there. They had them big portholes there, and they were open. Which you could hear them planes coming in. So out we come. Out I came, and on up to the top side.
How far up the top side?
I went clear up to the superstructure. That's where the anti-aircraft was. I had a battle station there. Although I had turret 2, I knew they couldn't use the turrets. And I went up there and I had a gun up there with a gun crew. But there was none of the crew was there. There was no firing locks on the gun, no ammunition there or anything. So then the planes was going over. They was dropping these torpedoes in the meantime and dropping a few bombs around. So I was standing there watching these Japanese planes coming across and just clearing our mass. And I could see it was the rising suns, and I knew it was Japanese then. But in the meantime, they was machine gunning us machine gunning the whole top side, and them bullets was hitting that wooden decks, which had wooden decks, and splinters were flying all around, boy. All of a sudden I realized what was going on, and I took off like a bird for my turret, which was about 80, 90 feet away, turret 2. I went inside there and up in my turret. I was in the booth. I was had the turret, in charge of the turret, and I had a turret officer over me, Lieutenant Hoffman was his name. And my whole crew manned their stations, and then the ship began to list very quickly. Started to list the port side. Kept going. And I told the turret officer, I said, we better pass the word to abandon ship to get them men out of the magazines in the lower handling room. But he says, no, this ship won't turn over. I says, yes, it is. It's going to turn over. But at that time, it was about like that. So finally, he let me pass the word. If he'd listened to me, I would have lost 28 men that morning. I lost 28 of my men down the handling room and shell deck. Never came out of there. 28 men out of the 82 I had. I lost 28 men in my turret crew. So I come out of there. I was smart enough to come up the deck because I knew those planes was coming in on the opposite side. They didn't want to get machine gun. I brought several fellows with me. We come up this Okie when she's leaning like that, and down the opposite side. They put them machine guns behind us so they couldn't get us, and down the wrong side, and then over. Then we dived over into the water. In the meantime, she was way over by then, and listing real bad. And to say the Maryland was here, and the Maryland was tied up to what they call Ballards to Fort Allen. And me and my gang, we swum right by the bow of the Maryland. Right there was Fort Allen. About 100 feet, more or less, was hit the island. And I turned around and looked back to see what was going on. About that time, the Arizona, which was astern of us, tied up, blew up. They dropped one down the smokestack. And it boiled up like a big ice cream cone, up and out. It looked like 500-600 feet in the air. And in a little bit, that began to feel something dropping around it, and I picked it up, and it was 14-inch magazine powder, about this long, about so big around. It was completely burned out from that terrific explosion down below. And the instant it blew up, there went, I believe it was 1,160 men. They killed them just instantly. And I think there were around 60 men that got off of the Arizona, and that was all. The whole crew died instantly from that terrific explosion. And then it burst into flames, and it was a burner. Smoke burned for 4-5 days, day and night, burning from the magazines, all those 5-inch magazines, 14-inch magazines down below. It burned for 3 to 4 days, day and night. Big flames continuing to come out. And set afire to all that oil. It was astern of the ships there, and a lot of men that didn't make it through that big oil spill. Now on the Okie, it ripped wide open. That, they say that if I remember right, there were 7 torpedoes hit the port side, ripped the whole port side open. That's what made her start listening to the port side, because all the compartments were wide open. We were going to have Admiral's inspection Monday morning. And they do a lot of painting, getting ready for Admiral inspection. So they left everything open to air out over Sunday and be ready for Admiral inspection Monday morning. Ship didn't have a chance. Didn't have a chance. It just turned over in about 8 to 10 minutes. It was completely turned over. We lost most of our men. It was down below the engineers force. And a lot were machine gun on the top side. I was one of the lucky ones. I could see the splinters of wood flying all around me. I never got hit, of course. Made it on into the turret behind that 14 inches of armor, and I was safe there from machine gun.
When you got on shore, and after the Arizona blew up, could you see the hull of the Oklahoma?
Yes, you could see it then. It had turned over enough that you could see the hull was turned up,
When you saw
laying over in the water like.
When you saw the upturned hull, what was your reaction?
Well, I knew that there was going to be a lot of my old buddies that was down in that lower part of that ship had never come out there. I knew that. And it was, planes was, of course, still coming over, and they were dropping bombs as they were coming over. They hit Fort Allen, they hit bombing the Battleship's row there. And I went on over to to the barracks, into the barracks there on Fort Allen. And that's where I stayed the rest of the day and that night. And I slept outside at night, out in the grass out there with a blanket. A couple of other sailors and myself. We slept right out in the open. It was nice and warm, in Honolulu over there.
Now, the Oklahoma had been your home for 15 years.
Oklahoma had been my home for close to 15 years. 1926, 1941.
So what did you think about losing your home?
That was sad. That I never felt so bad in my naval career as I did right that one day. I never will forget that.
All your pictures, medals, all that.
And I lost everything except what I had on. Shorts and a skivvy shirt and shoes. I lost everything else. Naturally, but it was a sad morning for my old buddies. They're like brothers to you because you're with men in the turret. For instance, I've been with them 7, 8 years. Lots of them, several of them, just like a brother. You live with them, you eat with them, you work with them. Hell, and you learn to love people like that. There's still some of the old fellas around yet. They're still living.
Were you there when they raised the Oklahoma?
No, I wasn't there when they raised it. I never come back to Honolulu or Pearl Harbor there until after the war. I was aboard the Louisville. We come in there right after the war ended. Come in there in September, I believe it was, 1945, to take on fuel and stores in Honolulu there. I got transferred to the New Jersey. I was on New Jersey until I retired in December 1946.
Did you go to the Oklahoma then when you went back to Pearl Harbor? Or, she'd been raised by that time.
No, I didn't go or anything. I don't know whether it was raised and it was gone. It must have been gone.
No,
then they tore it back to the States.
That was in 47 when they were towing it back in the summer.
47.
Yeah.
Well, it was still over there. They had turned
Yeah, they had
upright.
turned-
Yeah.
And she was there at Battleship Row, and the photographs I've seen, the Wisconsin was outboard of her.
Wisconsin
Of
out.
course, Wisconsin was a lot bigger than the Oklahoma.
Oh yeah. One of
Of course, all the superstructure was gone, everything. It was just a flat top.
The Oklahoma.
Yeah, everything was stripped off.
I know.
They completely stripped the ship.
Yeah.
And then whenever you heard that it had sunk a second time, mid-Pacific, what do you think?
Well, I was glad it did go that way. I said, well, my old home in the bottom of the Pacific now resting. That's fine with me.
Because they were going to scrap it.
Yeah, they won't make no razor blades out of that ship. That's just the way that I felt.
Whenever anyone mentions the U.S.S. Oklahoma, what do you think of?
Well, the first thing I think about is, for being a ship, it was certainly a home. It was just like being at home. And we were just one big family in the 4th Division. It seemed like just a big family of brothers, I would have stayed in the Navy till they kicked me out of the Navy if I could have stayed on the Oklahoma. I never would have retired in 1946. I'd just stayed right aboard there. Done until I finished my 30. But I was on a New Jersey, and I didn't care for that ship, and I got out just as soon as I was eligible to retire. I kind of came out of the Navy.
How would the Oklahoma compare to the other battleships?
In what way you mean, man?
Well, the crew, the officers.
No comparison. No comparison. The crew was much different. Like I say, they were just like a bunch of brothers. Everybody knew more or less everybody. You knew everybody in the division, which was from 70 to 90 men. And they'd do anything for you. You get in trouble, you had these guys to help you in a minute, ready to help. Officers was always good. We always had good officers, division officers in the 4th Division. Seemed to get good officers. Had good petty officers. You had to be good, because if you weren't, you didn't last long. Even the officers would seem to be that. They'd have to fall in with the rest of the officers and crew. So it was a good ship. The whole 14 years and a half I put aboard there. The best that I was ever on. I was on 4 other ships during the war. Put 2 of them in commission, a new cruiser and a new aircraft carrier. I put Shangri-La in commission in 1944, went back to the South Pacific. None of them compared to the Oklahoma.
Tell me about the captains of the Oklahoma.
The captains?
Yeah, which ones do you know the best?
Well, the one I knew the best was Captain Van Auken. That's the one that kind of stands out more than anybody else. And he was on there in 38, 39, and 40. Those years there, before World War II broke out, before the Japs hit Pearl that morning. He was a good captain. At least I liked him. I thought he was fine. And the other captains, I don't remember them too well. They come and go in over a period of years. And as long as you get along good and don't get in any trouble, you don't remember. At least I didn't.
Why does Van Auken stand out?
Well, for one thing, he was a German. Naturally, Van Auken, I guess, was a German name, but he was a German, and he was a big man. And he never had any little reason at all that he could call off Saturday morning inspections. He would do it, which would make us crew real happy, We'd be ready for inspection, and they'd pass the word, captain's inspection is called off. That'd make us real happy. That's why Captain Van Auken stood out so much for me.
Anything else about the Oklahoma you can think of?
How about your wrestling those years?
Well, I was a wrestler on there for about 7 years. And I had a couple of belts. I'd won wrestling. And I wrestled all up and down the coast with the wrestling team that I was on. We wrestled at colleges from UCLA and San Francisco and Seattle. Those college boys, we'd wrestle them. And that was my athletic activities on there.
Did you play baseball or?
No, I didn't. Wrestling was the main thing for me. I had probably 90 matches, 85, 90 matches in my wrestling career, and I only lost 2. I wrestled the national champion, and he's one that beat me. Lost a decision. He didn't pin me, but I couldn't turn my head for about 10 days. About broke my neck, but he didn't pin me. He didn't. I didn't break me. It's so stiff I couldn't turn my head.
Do you have any questions or any stories?
You pass?
You're telling the stories.
Well, she doesn't have anything.
Any stories that he's told you that you remember that he hasn't mentioned?
Well, he didn't shave when he first went on board. But he was, his Navy age is 2 years younger than,
Older.
older than his real age.
Yeah. My Navy age is. I was born 1908 instead of 1910. I had to lie about my age, and my dad swore that was when I was born, September 1908. That's how come I got in. I was 15 when I went in the Navy. I didn't shave, and the captain said, come by as a son. One time come by as a son. I think you're old enough now to start shaving. I was about 16 then. So I was born and raised in the Navy. practically. I love the Oklahoma. I love that ship. The ship crew. Always remember.
What about, what'd you do in VJ Day? The Japanese surrendered.
Let's see, where was I at when they surrendered?
They signed the surrender in September of 45?
Yes.
September 45, I know where I
I
was
can't
at.
remember what, just where I was at then.
Oh, you were on one of the ships, weren't you?
Well, where the heck was I?
Been defeated?
No.
Boy, we really don't.
Nah, I didn't celebrate it.
Well, you know, they had sunk the Oklahoma and then we...
Oh boy, I was glad it was over. Yes, I was glad that that war was over, because it was a tough one. We lost lots and lots of men and ships.
Anything else?
No, that's about it, Joe. I retired from the Navy. I was there in Bremerton Navy Yard in Washington. That's about my naval career.
Well, we have a good interview.
Good. Thank you.
We have almost an hour and a half.
I knew it was a long time.
You said that you were gonna make it short.
Okay. Thank you.
Who said it? Me?
You said it, you said, those
Well,
guys are talking too long, I'm gonna make mine short.
Well, I was hoping, but when you get started talking, it kind of time gets away from you. You know, it slips by faster than you think.
Yeah. What's your address?
Roy Stewart, 2336 Fayetteville, Ohio.
You have a street?
No, I live out in the country.
Okay, just 2036 Fayetteville, Ohio?
Fayetteville, Blanchester
Fayetteville
Road.
Bland Road, I'm sorry. F-A-Y period, B-L-A-N period, road, R-D, road.
And then Fayetteville.
Then Fayetteville.
Okay, and what's your zip code?
45118.
Okay.
That's it.
You went to, 'cause I was still on there. I thought